Hey everyone, welcome back. Blue Hour released today, and I'm excited for people to finally hear the full project the singles I've covered over the last few weeks have been building up to. You can find the album on all streaming platforms and my Bandcamp. If you'd like to purchase a cassette, I've partnered with Inner Ocean Records to release a limited run, which can be found on the Inner Ocean website. I'll have a link to that in the video description. Today I'm going to be covering the title track of the album. Blue Hour is predominantly made up of two tracks. The first track is a piano-like synth. All I'm doing with this track is using an instance of expression control to key track the filter cutoff, rolling off the low end with an EQ3, and taming some of the mid-range with a Pro Q. The next track is a pad. Like the first track, I'm rolling off the low end with an EQ3 and attenuating the mid-range with a Pro Q. I also have a filter at the end that has its cutoff frequency modulated for transitions. The other track that plays throughout the entire song is a field recording. This particular audio is actually from one of the videos I recorded for an episode of My Favorite Norn Scripts. Next I have a sample from one of the sample packs I wrote for Sound Ghost. This is what the audio sounds like without any processing. I pitched the file down one octave and I have the warp mode set to texture, and it's being stretched out as much as possible. I have the grain size at 263 and the flux almost at max. This makes the audio play back like it was in a granular sampler. The first device I have in the chain is a utility that is having its gain automated by an LFO. Next is an auto pan that has its amount knob controlled by the same LFO. This means that as the volume of the audio gets louder, the panning effect gets more pronounced. After that is an echo and finally an EQ3 to roll off the low end. Next is a recording of piano into Morphogene. For processing, first in line is an instance of Spectral Conquest that is eliminating the high and low end of the recording. The audio then goes into an echo and finally an auto filter that has its filter frequency modulated for transitions. After that is a recording of a Deerhorn sample into Fall. I've talked about this technique a few times in the past, but basically I'm bypassing Fall's sound engine and modulating the short delay time with a sample and hold envelope. When you play external audio into the delay, you get really cool glitchy pitched echoes. As far as processing goes, it's pretty simple. An instance of beat repeat to make some more glitches, an echo, and a reverb. This whole recording was done in one take and I just went through and took my favorite parts. Before I talk about the main track I want to highlight, there is one more piece of audio in this session. This is just a sample from a preset pack I did for Audio Modern that I'm using as a transition effect. I stretched it out to max length and set the warp mode to tones. I added a fade and a reverb and then automated the entire track to turn off to cut the tail. The final track in the song has a lot going on. This is actually a flattened version of the original track that is being further processed. To make this sound initially, I recorded a really wide open chord and added a Spectral Conquest to it. I then turned most of the frequency bands off and modulated some to open at specific times. You can hear the bass triggering every quarter note and the high-pitched note at the end of every bar. For the processing on the flattened track, I started with a Pro Q to get the mid-range in check, and then I added a glue compressor to really flatten the sound out. Next is an EQ3 to roll off the super low end, followed by an auto filter and redux which work in tandem. This is something I explored a lot on this album, and I've touched on it in previous track breakdowns. By cranking the resonance on the auto filter and adding artifacts with redux, you can get some really interesting digital distortion. I'm also modulating the jitter amount with an LFO here, which is something I did on the bass patch I talked about in the last video. This introduces little clicks and pops. After that, I have a limiter to bring the overall level up, an EQ3 to roll off the low end, and a Pro Q to rein in the mids. Finally, I have a high pass filter that has its frequency cutoff modulated for transitions. That's going to do it for today. I hope you've enjoyed these track breakdowns. It's definitely something I'm planning on doing for future albums. If you haven't seen the previous ones, I have a playlist called Blue Hour on my page which features all of the track breakdowns as well as the visualizers. If you'd like to hear the full track I went over today as well as the rest of the album, you can find me on all streaming platforms. I know my channel has been relatively inactive outside these Blue Hour videos recently, but there are some exciting things coming over the next couple of months, including episode 20 of my favorite Norn scripts. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.